Rev up your engines!
Well, there's a war of pickup trucks going on now, and it's for the mid-sized trucks, which they stopped making for a while. Ford, GM, and Toyota are all going after it. Like, Ford started the war with that Maverick. Now, it is made in Mexico, so I got questions about that, but they're interesting trucks. A lot of them are front-wheel drive. They drive a lot better than old trucks. They're more like cars, and a lot of them have the cab, so there's enough room for 4 or 5 people in it. So they're selling the heck out of it. So now Toyota's talking about making one. GM's working on them. And of course, you can imagine, most of the full-size trucks today, whatever BS they want to say about MSRP, they're going for $60,000 to $100,000. A lot of money. A lot of people don't have that kind of money, right? So they get a smaller truck. Now, you can't blame people because the prices increased over 53% of the big trucks. A decade ago, the average one was $28,100. Now it's $42,000 for the average one. Ford's got the redesigned Ranger. Toyota's redesigned the Tacoma. GM is working on Colorados and Canyons. So they're finally realizing, gee, maybe we're just trying to push these big expensive trucks too much. Maybe we should make mid-sized ones, right? Well, I say they could go even further, like Ford did. Go for the smaller ones. People go nuts about these Mavericks. Even though they're made in Mexico, they don't have much choice. There aren't that many small trucks to choose from, right? And Toyota's working on one. Hey, it only makes sense. Come on, people, go smaller. People don't necessarily want large. Look around. People driving down the road. Most vehicles only have one person in them. You don't need this gigantic pickup truck. A little one is fine. You can put a bunch of stuff in the back, and most of the time only one person's driving the thing. Anyway, I don't know why they stopped making them. Well, actually, I know why they stopped making the small ones. Because they made a bigger profit than the big ones. So like, we want the small ones anymore. We'll just make the big ones. Well, now they're learning, oh, gee, maybe we ought to go back to the mid-size and the smaller ones. Takes a while for these corporate dead from the neck up people to figure anything out. Jetty Alphonse says, what are your thoughts on a 2015 Hyundai Elantra? I got the engine replaced. Well, you kind of answered your own question there. It's a 2015, you had to replace the engine. The engines were crappy in those. Hopefully you got a better engine than the original one. I mean, geez, I got a 94 Solicut's got 240,000 miles on it. Still got the original engine and it still runs like a top. So I'm not a fan of those cars. Now, interestingly enough, today I just checked out a brand new Elantra and it's a year old and the guy's getting 54 miles a gallon driving it on the highway here. And it had a 2-liter non-GDI, non-turbo engine in it. I don't know if it's going to hold up over time. Only time will tell. You know, you never know until it's been out a while. But I mean, hey, yours isn't all that old and you had to replace the engine. That to me says I wouldn't buy one. Tyler Dennis says, Scotty, should I change to high mileage oil when the truck hits 75,000 miles? I use Pennzoil Ultra Platinum 020. Should I use the high mileage version? 2013 Tundra 5.7. No issues to report. No, don't waste your money. A lot of that stuff's just a gimmick at high mileage. And that's not high mileage. You're talking about a V8 Toyota Tundra with 75,000 miles on it, right? I've seen them with 400,000 miles on it. Yours is not a high mileage one. Just use what you've been using. It's an excellent oil. Don't waste your money on some high mileage BS sales nonsense that these companies come up with. You might be hearing some noises here. There's this crazy robin. And it goes to my window and it pecks at my security camera because it sees the red dot and I guess it thinks it's a worm. It keeps pecking away. I go there, it flies away. As soon as I come back here, it comes back and it starts pecking it. I guess I'm going to have to move my camera. Bird brains, right? There you go. See, I told you. Legend says, Scotty, what improvements will I notice with new spark plugs and ignition coils? Well, that depends. If your coils aren't worn out and the spark plug's on, you won't notice anything at all. Now, if they're worn out and you're getting misfires, it's very easy to tell. Today, you get a scan tool, any scan tool, plug it in, and it'll show you each. If it's a 4-cylinder, it'll show you misfires on each cylinder. And if they all say 0, well, you don't need ignition coils. You could change the plugs, but if they're actually worn, you'll have more pickup. It'll idle better and stuff. Modern stuff's made pretty good, and a lot of times these iridium spark plugs can last 150, 200,000 miles. And ignition coils can have an unlimited life. Once they break down, they start to misfire. You'll feel it. You'll get a code for engine misfiring. then you know it's time to do something about it. Awesome Man says, I've replaced an engine in 2 separate trucks, both blew camshafts. I was told it's from idling too much. I blew a 2014 Chevy 5.3 at 130,000 and a 2019 5.7 Ram at 104. Do you agree it's from idling? Well, at the Ram, yes, because those Hemi engines, they made them wrong. They redesigned them for more power, and they moved the cam too high up from the crankshaft, and at idle, the oil doesn't splash and the cams run dry. At high speeds, it works fine, but not idling, right? But at GM, I haven't really seen GMs blow up from idling too much. They don't have the engine design problems that the Rams have. Now, of course, if you're sitting there for 3-4 hours idling in a car, any car, they're not made for sitting there idling. Shut it off and do something else. Don't just sit there idling away. There's no point in doing it, right? Don't sit for hours in any car. They're not made for idling. They're made for driving down the road. Kenley Dunn Record says, can you unseize a Hyundai engine? All right, well, when an engine is seized, it means exactly what it says. The pistons are seized and they can't move anymore, right? So you got a serious problem. The problem with a lot of the Hyundais, they made them wrong, and I guess they had something wrong with the machines that made them, and especially the ones that are built in Alabama in the United States. And they would just freeze up because pieces of metal were inside and the metal got jammed. And in that case, your engine's toast. I wouldn't waste my time, right? The reason it's seized, you'd have to figure out. Let's drain your oil and stuff. If a bunch of metal comes out, forget it. It's not worth trying to fix. It's too far gone, right? If you wanted, you could pull the head, look inside, see what actually broke. If you got lucky, maybe it was a valve or something, okay, you could rebuild it. But on those, generally, they got a lot of metal shavings, and if they did, the whole engine's toast, junk it. I junked the whole car myself, but if you wanted to try to get that going, I'd say try to find a used engine, put it in, and then sell the thing. Well, you know, Ford has all these quality control problems, right? Well, now Ford is saying the next F-150 is going to get rid of 2,400 parts to cut costs and improve quality. Now it's got me scratching my head. It's like, okay, we'll use 2,400 less parts, but our quality will go up. The whole problem with Ford is they kept making things too cheap, and they farm them out to other companies. Their V6 engines that were blowing up in their Broncos, right? They were getting the valves from some company, and they weren't making them right. Ford didn't make them. They were getting them through this company. And if you keep cheapening things out like that to save money, it's going to bite you in the rear end. Well, how on earth they're planning on making a truck with 2,400 less parts, you know? And it's say they're going to improve quality. I think we're really living in la-la land now at Ford Motor Company. If you go back decades ago, their advertising slogan is Ford, quality is job one, right? Well, job one didn't work out all that way. That was decades ago. Now they got more problems than they had before, right? The idea that they're going to cut 2,400 parts off of these F-150s and they're going to make them better, make them cheaper, I understand that. They will be made cheaper. So if they have 2,400 parts less, guess what? Then they're going to have a lot bigger parts, unified parts. So when they break or you get in a wreck, well, you got to replace this whole thing now. We don't sell these little parts. You got to buy the whole thing. It would just be, you know, patent absurdity when it comes to fixing the things. If they're going to have just a few parts, they're going to be gigantic parts, right? Kind of like Tesla, with he's got a giant machine that makes the big parts for the Tesla. They're like 1/3 of the car, right? You get in a wreck, guess what? You got to buy that whole thing. Hoo-wee, you're looking at big time money. They don't care about fixing them, repairing them. You know, they just want to make them as cheap as they can and sell them for as much money as they can. And if they're planning on knocking off 2,400 parts off the F-150s, I say, hoo-wee, I'm not going to be buying one anytime soon. Maybe they'll leave the wheels off and then they won't have any problems with anything wearing out because they won't go anywhere. Maybe that's 4 parts that they'll eliminate. Damien, what's your opinion on the Bentley SUV, Scotty? They cost a fortune. That kind of money. You got so much money to buy one of those, I'm sure you can afford the outrageous repair bills you're going to get, right? It'd be like asking somebody, well, what's your opinion of the Learjet? Okay, if you got enough money to buy a Learjet, you're going to have an awful lot of money to maintain and take care of the jet too. So it's kind of the same thing. If you're in that level and you want to impress people by spending a ton of money on a Bentley SUV, well, go right ahead. You know, they got all kinds of bells and whistles, but I mean, it's an English thing. It'll probably fall apart. But if you have that kind of money, you won't care. And I'm sure it's not your only vehicle. Most people buying those have all kinds of other cars too, so it's not like you're depending on it for transportation every day. Nighttime says, would you rather have a 2004 RAV4 Sport, 208,000 miles, or 2008 Nissan Maxima SE, 175,000 miles? Okay, you're talking apples and oranges. I'd rather have the RAV4. It's going to last longer. They're better made. The Nissans, 2008, Renault owned the company for a while. Quality went down. I wouldn't want one of those anyways. But you're talking a nice little SUV versus a car. You got to decide, what do you want? You want an SUV? You want a car? I mean, if I wanted a car, I'd get a Camry. I wouldn't get a Maxima. Jose Martinez says, Scotty, I'm going to be buying a Honda Accord 05 4-cylinder. I'm switching jobs and need something cheap for now. What do you think? Well, they're excellent cars. I mean, the thing's 19 years old now, but hey, even at that, you want to find a mechanic like me to check it out before you buy it. You never know what's happened in the last 19 years. Maybe it's been wrecked, flooded, has all kinds of problems. You never know. But any mechanic in half an hour with the scan tool can tell you whether a Honda Accord is good or not. They only break in certain ways, and any mechanic will tell you very quickly if it has a problem or not. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.